Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Tauscher Take. I'm Lance Veeser alongside Packers Hall of Famer Mark Tauscher. We're going to try and stay positive, Mark, but I don't know that it's possible. Yeah, it's not real possible. Let's start with something not so positive. That was Ty Montgomery's fumble. Now, he's getting blasted today. Yeah. Now, they're saying that he was pouting on the sidelines and that he was told not to take it out. Do you still kind of wait and see mode on all this? Because Ty didn't talk after the game, so we don't have his side of the story.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think you have to hear both sides of the story. And, Mike McCarthy came out. You've heard comments from other players. You saw the Mike Silver piece. Regardless, it was a poor decision, and it was compounded by fumbling the football. And if he doesn't fumble, we're not talking about it today. But it's something that cannot happen. You can't make a mistake like that, and it ends up costing your team a football game. Now, people make physical mistakes all the time. If it's what is being reported and what you've seen, that's a whole nother story. But I would like, just to see and hear a little bit more before I completely make a judgment on how that played out.
Because if it's true that he was pouting on the sidelines beforehand and then was specifically told not to come out and he does and fumbles, as a player in that locker room, is he ostracized almost at this point as a bad teammate?
What you can't do is you have to have the trust of your teammates, because everybody understands you're going to get beat for a touchdown. You can give up a sack, but you can't be insubordinate and not do what is specifically asked from you to do. And when you have that and you don't have the trust of your teammates or your coaches, and I'm not saying that's the case, but if you don't have that, you can't play. And then it's best for all parties involved just to do something different, because if you, as a coach, don't trust your player, how on earth are you ever going to put him out there? You can't.
I said we're going to try and keep it positive, so let's do that.
Yeah, let's move forward.
There was actually some pretty solid play from the Packers in this one, right? What stood out to you in a positive fashion?
I think if you just look, listen, Gurley has been dominant, and you knew every team comes in and plays Los Angeles, says, all right, we're going to stop Gurley. Okay, that's great. You can have that plan. Green Bay executed that for a long, especially in the first half, and Blake Martinez was all over the place. Kenny Clark, Mike Daniels in the backfield making plays. And then, to me, the star of the game yesterday from Green Bay standpoint was Jair Alexander. What he was able to do, you could sense that Los Angeles was saying, we're going to attack him. And whether it was Cooks or whether it was Woods, whoever it was, they were going after him. And to have 5 pass breakups in a game and 7 tackles, that's big-time football. So you give him a ton of credit. You hope all of a sudden now you feel really good about having him having him out there and being healthy as a contributor on this defense. That's only going to improve what the capabilities of this team can have.
Looking big picture here, Brian Gutekunst's first draft. Jair Alexander's playing well. Yep. Josh Jackson's been pretty solid. Yep. Valdez-Scantling has a touchdown. Equanimeous St. Brown. It's looking like this was a pretty solid rookie class because you're getting contributions immediately.
Absolutely, and I think when you're a draft-to-develop team like Green Bay is, you see, Gutekunst is also picking up veterans, so it's not just draft like it was with Ted. But you have to say, you always want to look for that second half of the season, because early in the season, rookies are headed swimming. You're not going to see what you're really getting until you start getting comfortable with the system. And now you're starting to see that. You want to see that growth, and if you're doing that, that means the coaches are getting what they're asked, and obviously you feel good about from an evaluation standpoint. There's some talent improvements, especially in the back end.
All right, narrowing our focus back to this season here, the Packers still in the hunt in the division, obviously. They're still right there. But we're going to take a look at the schedule coming up, and we've talked about it. On the road, they don't have a win. So they weren't bad necessarily at L.A., but when you look at these 3 road games coming up, they got to win at least one of them, right?
Yeah, you would think so. And, I mean, preferably, if you're going to say you can only get one, let's get the Vikings. Mm-hmm. I mean, with tiebreakers and everything else, that is going to, in my opinion, probably determine who wins this division is going to be that game. But it's a daunting schedule. You knew that coming in, and that was why yesterday hurts, just from a fan standpoint, and I'm sure players and coaches, because you were against a team that has not lost a game. You had everything lined up for you to go out and win. You played good football, and you came up on the short end, because now you're flying back home, then you're flying all the way out east to play against, you don't have to even say anything about the Patriots. You know what you're getting. You're going to have to go out there and put together a great plan and execute it in order to come out with a win. So out of this schedule, if you can go 2-2, I think you feel okay, especially if one of those is a win versus the Vikings.
The Bears are technically in first place. We're halfway through the season. I know you've been saying it's Vikings, Packers. You still believe that,
I
right?
do. I still believe that because, Green Bay, I always look at quarterback play when it comes down to this, and I know the Bears' defense has made a lot of improvements. Trubisky is playing better, but I don't know if I trust that Chicago has enough offense to get this thing done, because as the season unfolds, you have to be able to score a bunch of points. And Chicago has been inconsistent in that regard, so I still think it's going to end up being a Green Bay and a Minnesota deal.
All right, you wanted to say Wisconsin, so let's just talk about Wisconsin, right? That was your segue, yes. Right? Segue. All right, talking Badger football. Hugely disappointing loss in Northwestern. Might have cost them the Big Ten West and some other things. We'll get to that in a minute. The big talk, obviously, is the quarterback. Alex Schweinebrook, questionable again this week for the Rutgers game. What did you see out of Jack Cohn? Was it enough where you feel comfortable if he has to go another couple games?
Well, I don't even think you have a choice. You get an opportunity like that, and I thought, he was okay. There wasn't anything that really popped out as a big negative. He was able to complete some underneath throws. But, again, he had a couple of mistakes. You saw the fumbled exchange with Jonathan Taylor. Then you saw where he was trying to get out of the pocket, turn the football over. That's expected to happen with a young player. But when you're in a fight to really keep your season alive, you can't have it. And so it's a growing process. I think you like some of the things that he brings to the table. But, unfortunately, it just wasn't good enough to get a win on a game that you really needed.
He did complete a pass to himself, too.
That's always,
Brett Favre did that to start his career, so maybe.
So, you drawing that correlation?
I'm just saying, it's Wisconsin sports style. Let's just mix it up together. You mentioned some of the mistakes, fumbles, just killer for this team right now. Jonathan Taylor can't really seem to get it fixed, although one of those is probably not his fault. Does it still bother you that after all this talk over the last 2 years, he's still fumbling?
Well, it's a problem, and I don't think you can sweep it under the rug and say, well, the quarterback has changed. The bottom line is it's results. And Jonathan Taylor has been a great running back for this program. But when you have that but and when you make the mistakes and putting the ball on the ground, you can't have it. And he's done it too consistently. Defenses are looking at it. They're attacking that as a big weakness in his game. And he has to get that corrected, not only to be an impact player for this program for the next year, but I know he has aspirations to go on. That just doesn't, in the NFL, that's a no-break. That's a no deal. You can't put the ball on the ground. They just won't play you.
All right, we said we'd try and stay positive, so let's talk positive with the Badgers. Now, injury situation not positive. Olive Segapolo already's been ruled out for the Rutgers game. Dakota Dixon, Scott Nelson, your starting safeties are questionable. But some of these young guys are starting to step up. We have Madison's own Evan Bondock getting interceptions. They're at least forcing turnovers. You're seeing enough where you're like, okay, I mean, you're at least happy to see that these young guys can make some plays and keep you in games.
I think from a defensive standpoint, you talked about some of the guys that have stepped up. I think that the inside linebackers who were expected to be the strength of the team, and they've really elevated their game. And you see Conley, tipping a pass and leading to a turnover. You see TJ Edwards all over the field. Those guys are kind of holding this thing together because you have Dakota Dixon, you have Nelson out, and it's been a defense that's been decimated by injuries. They're hanging in there and giving this team an opportunity to win games. At the offense, even with turning the football over, you're still in these games, but I think it's just been disappointing as an overall unit from how this team has played this season.
All right, when we look big picture with the Wisconsin Badgers, I'm going to show you a graphic here. This loss at Northwestern was huge. I mentioned it might have just cost them the Big Ten West. This is how it shakes out right now. So Northwestern actually started their season with a Big Ten game against Purdue. So they already beat Purdue first game. So they're one up on everybody in the games played column here for all these other contenders. You look at it, so now they essentially have a 2.5 game lead over Wisconsin and Purdue. Iowa's really the only team with a chance to kind of catch them as Northwestern finishes with Illinois, Minnesota, and then they have the one game against Iowa. So, I mean, you got to win out, and you got to get some help to get back in this thing. It might be over for the Badgers, and considering how this thing started, how kind of disappointing is it for you?
Hey, there's no question it's disappointing. The guys in the locker room, everybody involved, the fans, because you had these incredibly high expectations, which is great. But, unless Iowa can go and beat Northwestern and just, get this thing as muddy as possible where you have three teams, Wisconsin still has to go to Purdue and win, still would have to go to Penn State and win, and, beat everybody else that's on their schedule. It's looking pretty daunting, and that's why this game last Saturday was so critical for Wisconsin because of that head-to-head tiebreaker that they hold over Iowa. Northwestern's in the driver's seat, and unless they completely implode, it's going to be tough to catch them.
I know after the game, the guys didn't even want to talk big picture because they're like, it doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. We got to focus week to week. Can you do that as a player? Kind of put the blinders on right now?
I think you lose to BYU, and it's, the thing is, well, all of our goals are still in front of us. You have to reassess. And, you're not out of it yet. You can still get yourself into the mix. Now you're playing for each other, and you're trying to figure out how can we win football games the expectations now of what this season started, they are no longer. Now it's trying to figure out how can we salvage this season and send the seniors out on a positive note.
We'll try to end with positivity. So Bucks are 6-0.
Yeah, Bucks are humming.
Milwaukee Bucks. He's Mark Tauscher. This is Tauscher's Take. Thank you, Mark.
You bet.